there is so much to report on. I hardly know where to start, but I've been remiss in not really doing what I do as an information scout and not really focusing as intensely as I should have, I don't think, on the the European farmer revolts. They are really quite something at this point in time, and they are worth your time to know about. So what do we know about them? Well, let's take a quick peek here. This is off of my Twitter feed. This is so early, about February 20th, some things started to break, and there were German farmers started to rally and do stuff. This is here. If we look at this, is from February 26th. This is already kind of late. This is pretty well organized. You can see what is going on. I mean, this is just a huge line of tractors on one of the motorways. This by February 25th, the German farmers had managed to block all of these different autobahns. All their major east, west, north, south routes were blocked, and they really made themselves known. Now, what was interesting about this was just how little coverage this got anywhere in the Western press. Here in the United States, wouldn't even have known it was happening, honestly, by any of the newspapers I read, and I scour through for you. The New York Times, not Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and Financial Times now, and et cetera. And there really was very little coverage given. This is a big deal, right? If this had been, just one tractor with one Nazi in it, I mean, goodness, you would have heard about it 500 times by now. But because these are farmers, they didn't want you to know about it. And why do they not want you to know about it? Well, that's pretty easy. They don't want these ideas catching on. This is like one of the most dangerous things of the past few years has to have been the Canadian trucker revolt. So proud of them for doing that. Honk, honk, right? Scared them crazy up there in their little ivory elite, communist towers. And that's what we have to call these people. We're under full-on assault at this point in time. We are under enemy assault, right? We know that. It's a multi-front attack vector coming in from all these different attack vectors. We know that our cognition's being assaulted. We know that our sense of trust has been assaulted. We no longer trust each other, let alone ourselves sometimes. We don't trust any of the key major institutions. The Department of Justice has been weaponized against us. They want to destroy our rights as parents to have a say in our own children's lives. They want those to be raised by the state. They don't like Christianity. They don't like anything. They only want what they want. And I'm not really clear what this thing is about. I don't know why they want to destroy America so bad. Or Europe. I don't get it, but they are. So this is the farmers in Europe finally saying enough. And this has been really wrapped up in the way they try and explain this is, I'll show you some of it. It's pretty gross, but they try and explain it as like, oh, they're just rebelling against trying to do their part in helping to control climate change, right? Which they never explain why the bureaucrats, the administrative class in Brussels, say for Europe, why they would start with farmers. Like if you really looked at the overall carbon load balance of things, you wouldn't start with farming. It's just not an obvious place to start. You know where is an obvious place to start? I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't be having wartime budgets where we blow things up. I don't know. Maybe we should look at the per capita ingestion and cut it off at a certain level to say, oh, you're a billionaire? You don't get a mega yacht that puts out the equivalent of 3,000 people's worth of carbon. You don't get that. Or something. But with farmers, it's a really bizarre thing. So we have to explore where that came from and what that means. So this is interesting. So this was February 26th is this particular tweet here. But look how it spread really quickly. By February 27th, it was Polish farmers as well. And they organized a major protest in the center of Warsaw there. And it's only gone on since then. And it went from the Polish farmers and the German farmers. And then the German farmers actually joined up with the Polish farmers. And if you know anything about German-Polish relations, apparently that's quite the feat to get Germans and Poland people to come together on any sort of an issue. So that's a big deal. And they're complaining, right? So they have bad pricing. And of course, the diktat class out there will just put out more and more and more rules. They don't come with money, right? These new rules, they just come with, hey, you farmers have to set aside some land, do this, not that, rule. It would be better for me if the Department of Agriculture at the state level, at the provincial level, at the canton level, at the state level, at whatever level, we'd say, hey, Department of Agriculture, you have a budget of $10 million. However, when you pass a new rule, any costs associated with that has to come out of your budget. You show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. If we had that, we would get very different rule sets. But because they don't have to pay for their rules, They just have to impose the rules. Well, that's a lot of fun. If you have to impose the rules but also pay for them, that's a lot less fun. So I think we would get instant alignment of things if we did it that way, because I think having some rules makes sense, but not the level that we have right now. So that's, at least in no small measure, some of the complaints of the farmers, but we're going to go deeper than that. Of course, we're going to look at this a little bit more deeply. Now, this is a big deal. This is just 14 hours ago. So this was yesterday on March 3rd, which would be Sunday. German farmers continuing their protests. So they've been going at it since about February 20th to the 27th. Here, this 2 full weeks. This is like an important part of the planting, or just before the planting season. Farmers are busy people all year round, but they're coming up on their super busy season. And instead of doing farming things, they're doing this, which is farmer things, but not planting and things like that. An hour ago, it says here, somebody said, I think we need to borrow some skills from the French and German farmers protest. Look at this. Look. Oh, big steam. I thought all that beautiful manure ought to go on a field, but here they are. Oh, just spraying it all over the Parliament building there. And, I guess I don't know what they're doing here, but they're spraying stuff out of their sprayers there like that, like something that like a thresher machine, but they put like newspaper in it. And it's hay getting just sort of shredded and spreaded. And look at the size of these protests. I mean, this is not insignificant. Question: why haven't you heard about this? That's a big deal right there. That's a big deal. It's a huge deal. But because they're farmers, nobody cares, I guess, is the message we get off of that. Nobody cares. But they're busy doing what they can to make a mess out of things. Now, carrying on, this spread over. So Irish farmers also starting to get into the mix here on February 27th. So this is all spreading last week pretty strongly. And then we see here from March 2nd, German farmers back at it again. And here they are blocking one of the larger motorways out there. I mean, this is very significant activity going on here. Carrying on, Swiss farmers now joining in on March 1st. They send a SOS to the government. You might think the Swiss people were a little bit less doofy to their own farmers, but no go. So that's a pretty interesting thing that the farmers have arranged there, and the SOS sign. All of Europe is ruled by Brussels, which is, that unelected, I mean, just it's an administrative like nightmare. That's what Brussels has turned into. Switzerland is on its own a little bit, so they should be able to set their own rules, but really not. And the farmers have been getting really squeezed for a very, very long time. This is from a couple hours ago. This was posted, but German farmers, again, blocking roadways. We see here they're pretty serious about it. Again, massive, massive numbers of farmers and farm equipment, and they put on all their blinking lights, and they're making a really big fuss, and they're blocking everything and doing what they can to say, hey, we need to be heard. Now, they had some limited success. They did get Brussels to back off on a couple of their carbon net neutral plans, which were insane on the surface. They could never be met. But, they're administrators, so we have a Gantt chart here, and we're supposed to have farming be carbon neutral by 2040. So how do we get there, right? Again, it makes no sense. Nobody can tell you how squeezing on farmers is going to help climate change. Nobody can connect those two dots. Can't be done. However, I can tell you that you're going to put a lot of your own farmers out of business. And so this is the crazy part, is just how disconnected those administrators get ultimately from life, right? And so I wondered about that. And then somebody at the site, I'm so sorry, I forgot who, had posted this incredible thing here. Let me see if I got it. Let me see if I can pull this up. I think I put this up here. Oh, yeah. Let's see if we can pull into this. So this is a really great piece written by, supersize this a little bit. Make this a little bigger. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yep, I can read that. Okay. By John Michael Greer. So he put this up in July of 2023, and this is the end of the Age of Reason. This is a really incredible piece of writing. I invite everybody to look at it because it takes you through the three big arcs of asocial, birth, and midlife and death, right? In essence. So you go from the age of faith into the age of reason, and then out of the age of reason into something called religiosity before you sort of have your decline. But at any rate, that isn't the part I wanted to get to. The part I wanted to get to was this. Down here, It's very good, very good. So why does the age of reason end, right? So this is interesting. He says, looking back over the greater sweep of history and the Western world's age of reason settles into its proper perspective. I love John Michael Greer. He goes way back and connects dots across big sweeps and seems to know what he's talking about. Every civilization has its own age of reason, he writes. It begins a couple of centuries after the end of that civilization's original feudal era, lasts for 2 to 4 centuries, and then gutters out. The classical civilization of the ancient Mediterranean, which had its first great intellectual flowering in Greece and settled into its fixed form under the rule of Rome, is a case in point. The Greek feudal era ended around 800 BC. The Greek age of reason began with Thales of Miletus, the first Greek philosopher who was active in 585 BC when he predicted an eclipse, and it guttered out around 322 BC with the death of Aristotle. During that period, Greek-speaking intellectuals in various parts of the Eastern Mediterranean world invented Western philosophy, turned logic and geometry into rigorous studies, and applied geometry to the heavens to create the first spatial models of planetary motion. Comparable periods in the Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Indian, Chinese, Arabian, and Mesoamerican cultures saw equally impressive intellectual achievements. Then, in every case, the age of reason ended. And it didn't end because some outside factor squashed it, by the way. It ended because human reason turned out to be inadequate to the tasks it tried to accomplish. Human reason, after all, is not an omnipotent superpower. It's simply a collection of cognitive habits that help avoid certain common mistakes. It's much more dependent on language and culture than most members of its fan club would like to admit. And if you doubt this, pick up a book on medieval logic or Buddhist logic. Both of these have been studied closely by scholars writing in English and other modern Western languages, and see how much sense either one makes to you. Apply it to a subject, to words, for example, as the ancient Greeks did, to consciousness, as the ancient Indians did, to society, as the ancient Chinese did, to nature, as Western societies are still doing. And you get good results. For a while. And that's what launches an age of reason. What ends an age of reason, in turn, is the inevitable discovery that human reason won't keep people from behaving like people. Plato's dream of philosopher kings governing perfect city-states according to the light of reason collapsed into the fratricidal bloodshed that ended the golden age of Greece. Confucius's dream of society brought into accord with harmony and virtue imploded just as messily, resulting in the dictatorship of the psychopathic tyrant Qi Shingdi. I pronounced that all wrong. Mangled that one. The same story has played out many other times under many other skies because it's all too easy for reason to turn into rationalization. And the people tasked with running the world according to the latest cutting-edge intellectual ideas end up using those ideas as so many excuses to enrich themselves at society's expense. That's good writing. Here it is. This is the money paragraph. That inevitably generates blowback